Welcome to the Data Career Podcast. Here's your host, Avery Smith.
What is up, everyone? Happy Tuesday, coming from Linden, Utah at 12 p.m. Eastern or 10 a.m. Mountain Time. This is the Data Career Podcast. I am joined today with Matt Blasa. I'm super excited to have him on the podcast and get to hear from him. So, Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, nice to meet you. Finally in person.
I know we've commented on each other's LinkedIn and we've messaged each other maybe a couple times on LinkedIn before, or commented obviously, but never talked face to face. This is fun. For all of those who don't know Matt, definitely go check him out on LinkedIn. Connect with him on LinkedIn. His name is Matthew Blasa. Like I said, Blasa. I'm going to give a quick little bio. He's a data governance analyst, which is a pretty sweet title, pretty interesting right there, for Brinks Home. But he's worked as a data science freelancer and analyst for the last few years. He's worked with a lot of technologies, including Python, SQL, Tableau, Go, Alteryx, Databricks, Azure, SaaS, AWS, and Azure, which is like a huge tech stack to manage. That's a lot to know. He's an active contributor to the data science community on LinkedIn. And yeah, so I'm super excited to have him on the show and learn a little bit about his background, what advice he'd give to people who want to break into the field, what advice he would want to give to people who want to do freelancing, and all of this valuable knowledge that Matt has. So let's go ahead and get into it. Matt, I would love to hear your story about how you ended up in data, because that's not necessarily the path that you first chose in your career, right?
No, absolutely not. For me, I started out in marketing. So I was literally just doing higher education marketing, just sending out stuff for international students saying, hey, come to my university. It's great. You'll learn a lot. And then from there, just slowly working into international programs where I was just trying to send out like targeted emails, Google Analytics, that sort of thing, trying to retarget people from East Asia, that sort of countries for international students who wanted to study in the United States. Somewhere along the line, it was progressive. I didn't have this idea of, hey, I got to go into data science. It started out with, okay, why am I like doing this marketing stuff? Okay. And then like, wait, these are interesting metrics. And then it came from there. It's like, how do we calculate out these metrics? And then it went to finally, oh, there might be a way to predict this stuff, or there might be a way to use this data to, segment customers, target certain groups, and try and, see like what kind of customers, what kind of students that we're pulling in. So it wasn't a straight path. I would say it's a very long and winding path up this mountain, and I'm not nowhere near the top. I hope I'm near the top.
Yeah, well, I think if you're not there, you're definitely on your way. That's for sure. So okay, you started in digital marketing then, right?
Yep.
And
yes,
and that sounds kind of like that was your path into data science. So how were you using data science in your digital marketing? Was it mostly segmentation or?
It was mostly segmentation. We were doing a lot of work with like analytics when I was working with some of the companies in Japan and China. It was more of, hey, these customers actually click through on our emails, or hey, these people, look at this person. This person went through from this path and they went all the way through, and their last click was from this area. And we have them in the record here, and hey, they bought this much. So my start out was, okay, let's identify these customers. What did they buy? Like, market basket analysis. What do they buy together? What products do they buy together? Let's retarget them with ads, specialized ads, and I didn't do a recommender system. I wish I did back then. But hey, let's go to talk to the developers and then start out with a recommender system with these items. And that's how I got into it. I'm like, wait, you can do a recommendation system off this? So working with those developers really piqued my interest and got me into the data science end.
Okay, interesting. And I guess for those who maybe don't know too much about marketing or even too much about analytics specifically in marketing, can you define what segmentation basically is?
Yeah, of course. Segmentation means that we're trying to look at customer traits. For example, people who frequently buy, let's say, cream, or in my end, higher education, certain people who target MBA programs or master's programs for like sociology. So we would segment those out by the people's interests. and also the responses on the surveys to predict whether or not they would be which programs that were likely to go through based off previous people who had gotten into the programs and based off their grades. So I wasn't actually doing the other stuff there at the time, but I was watching these guys doing it, and I'm like, hey, this is cool. And then I found out, oh wait, this is math. Interesting, because I have an interest in math. So I'm like, okay, maybe I should pursue this.
Okay. So yeah, walk us through that next step then. What you saw these people doing these, complex analyses and doing these recommendation systems and doing the segmentation, and you were kind of watching from the sideline. Maybe not the sideline. You were coming up with business reasons and asking him to do this, but what led you to the point today where you could do that analysis yourself? What was that next step?
Oh, well, the next step was I kind of well, long story short, I dropped out of computer science program at Portland State University, Portland Community College. I was trying to get an AA there because I wanted to do programming, didn't like it. So I worked as a marketing person for a while because that was easier. And then, I mean, I realized, hey, wait, these guys are actually solving problems. And then I said, you know what, maybe I should go to school for math and figured because math is the foundation of this. Maybe if I learn some math, maybe I'll find my way into something that uses this. At the time, I had no idea what math was. To be honest, I just did regular math. It wasn't statistics or anything like that.
Okay. So you got a math degree, or did you get a math degree? What, like, how did you become a data scientist?
Well, I'm not a data scientist per se. I'm more of somewhere in between. I'm contract. I'm not. I want to get the full-time role eventually, but it's a lot, just mostly a lot of like working on the side, like the freelancing stuff. I'm not one of those people. I started out doing the freelancing because I'm like, hey, I need some money. Uber's too hard on my car. I don't want to do that, and I want to do something that I love and something I can understand. So it started out that way, and then I realized when I was doing that, hey, I can learn a lot from it. So my freelancing switched from, hey, I got to pull in the cash to, hey, let me pick the projects that I can do. Maybe I can do some Uber stuff on the side. They can balance each other out, and I can pick the projects I want, and I can gain the experience that I want from that while using my math. I mean, honestly, most of the stuff I learned in the university is just all theory. But when I actually was using it in these contract jobs, then I'm like, oh, that's how you use it.
Yeah, that's really cool. So you're learning these things in school and stuff like that, but you weren't actually really learning it, or like at least applying it, until you got to these contract jobs. And so, okay, did you take like contract jobs, ones that you were sure you knew how to do, or some that you were like, oh, I could probably figure this out? What type of freelance jobs were you aiming for?
I usually took ones that I'm like, I'm just gonna figure this out as I go along and just take the risk. And if I fail out, well, oh well. I mean, I'm going to be professional about it and say, look, this is beyond my ability. Hey, here's some freelancers I know who can do the job. And they can do a good rate. That let's refer it to them. Thank you for your time. I'm sorry I can't do it. And I mean, I was upfront and honest with the clients. Um, for the Chinese and the Japanese clients, I got those through some relatives and some friends. And those guys were just as clueless as I was, to be honest. They're like, hey, we saw this, cool, you do it. And I'm like, okay, I'll do it. And I mean, they were really good about pushing. So they were always like, I saw this, and they're always ahead. So they're like, I saw this, can you do this? And that really pushed me from, hey, I'm just doing a market basket analysis with Python to, oh, hey, I want you to do not only a market basket analysis, but I saw this thing called K-means. Can you show me how I can segment my customers? So that's how it evolved. It wasn't like a conscious step. I'm going to go do K-means. I'm going to do NLP. I'm going to do all this. No, it's just completely from the clients pushing me.
Yeah, you were figuring it out as you went, and you didn't necessarily know everything, but you kind of figured it out. And like, if you didn't know something, where would you try to learn it?
Google and Stack Exchange, honestly, and reaching out to people on LinkedIn. So if there was someone I knew or friends I knew, I said, hey, can you help me with this? I don't understand this concept. Can you tell me more about it? Or just go on Stack Exchange and say, hey, can I look, like, does this work? Because I before I started using Alteryx and all this other stuff, I had to like hand program out stuff using like SQL Alchemy, and that was a nightmare. So it was a lot of Stack Exchange, a lot of asking friends, and then a lot of like YouTube tutorials. I mean, you just got to grind your way through it.
Wow, that's awesome. I'm glad to hear that. And yeah, I still use Google and Stack Exchange every single day, all the time, even like for things that I definitely should know how to do. And things that I've looked up probably 10 times. Like if you looked at my like browser history for that particular link, I probably visited, 20 times and I should know it, but I still use it every day. It's a great resource to have as a data professional. I want to go back to something you said, something interesting earlier. You said, I don't know if I'm quite a data scientist yet. I'm aspiring to be a full-time data scientist. And tell me more about your thoughts about that. What is the definition of a data scientist for you?
I mean, that's very nebulous because I mean, we hear debates all the time on LinkedIn, Facebook, Reddit about, oh, what's a data scientist? I've seen it in different, working with the data scientists, I've seen different ones. I mean, there's some who are just have the title data scientist and they just do pure Excel. Well, they're doing statistical analysis, so that's still a data scientist. Then you have the other ones on the other end who are just like programming out a pipeline in addition to, getting statistical analysis. That's still a data scientist. I mean, for me, I mean, I'm coming from a culture where it's like you're not really something until you actually get it. So that's just my personal goal. For everyone else, I mean, data scientist is a big title. I mean, it's nebulous. It's nebulous. But for me, I really would like to work someday professionally and in the role instead, as a contractor.
Oh, yeah. Okay. That's fair, I think. Definitions of data science are very varied, and there's a lot of differences between people's beliefs. And some people are very like conservative. Oh, you're not a data scientist until you have worked as a data scientist for 5 years,
yep.
and you know how to use neural networks, convoluted, like a million like requirements, crazy requirements. Yeah, exactly. And some people are like, oh, I did a linear regression, so I'm a data scientist. And I'm not going to say that either of those are wrong. There's a range of the terms data scientist, but I think I'm more on the liberal side that like, if you're doing something with data, you can, in fact, I actually hate the title data scientist. I wish people would just say, I do data science, right? Mm-hmm. Because it's like you can, and I think people have a hard time realizing this, but you can do data science without being a data scientist.
Yep.
That's like saying you can't do math unless you're a mathematician. And it's like, no, there's lots of professions that use math. There's lots of examples of where math is useful, and you don't have to be a mathematician. So anyways, I just thought it was interesting that you were like, I'm not quite a data scientist yet. And in my mind, I'll give you the pass, but I like the ambition. You're like, oh no, I have a clear goal. I want to be a full-time data scientist for some company and have the title. Mm-hmm. I think that's cool. I do think titles are overrated, but I'm excited for you to get that title. I think you're on your way. I did want to we did have some people pop in to say hello. Just wanted to say hi to some people. We have Natish here.
Oh,
we have Sana here, Rola here, Timir. And then I guess this actually transitions to my next question I had. Derek's asking, the company that you're currently for, I guess the role is data governance analyst.
Correct.
And it's for Brinks Home. Is that correct?
That is correct.
What do they do? Are they a security company? What do they do?
They're not the Brinks. They're not like the Brinks trucks guys. They're related to them, but they're not connected to them. They're the sister company. Mostly they're kind of like ADP. So they deal with a lot of home security. So, like cameras, the stuff you put in your home, cameras, panels, that sort of thing, just to make sure that people can't get into your home. They also do a lot of monitoring and of that sort as well. So that's what they primarily do. They're very specialized.
Okay. Well, I mean, home security is huge. Well, home security is huge, it's pretty crazy. I mean, it's a big field. You want to be able to feel safe. So I know it gets a little complicated sometimes talking about who you're currently working for, but in a broad sense, are you able to tell us what you do there? And I guess I'm specifically really interested in the title data governance analyst, because I'm not sure I've heard that title before. So tell me a little bit about that title and what you do.
So I mean, data governance analyst is sort of like a data analyst who's more focused on like the governance aspect of the data. So ensuring data quality, documentation, QA. So those are the three primary stuff I do. I don't build any pipelines or any of that sort where I am, but I am working with the data engineering team to govern those pipelines. You know, to build out data models. I do a fair bit of data modeling, not data architecture, but data modeling, like ensuring the quality and heavily working with stakeholders. So, I mean, I would say 90% of my job is working with stakeholders because for data governance, governance and accuracy or cleanliness of data, it really depends on the end user. So, what could be good for, like, if I worked for ADP or some other company, what their end user terms as good quality data is different between departments and different between companies. So, what a data governance analyst does is to make sure that it meets those requirements, build out the models for those requirements, and be able to ensure that the data quality and the query speed and whatnot that's important for those is working, and also building out data lineage as well.
Yeah. Okay. I think that makes sense. That makes a little more sense now. How would you explain what data governance is to someone who's maybe never heard that term before?
Right. Data governance is basically is making sure that model that how would I put this? It's basically ensuring that the end user has has the quality of data that they need, the right amount of data that they need, and also organized in the way that they need. And they can look at the metadata or the overall picture and see how each piece of data is connected. It's one thing if you're just building out data models or that stuff, but you have to see how one model is connected to another. So business objects, see how they connected to each other, and make sure that the data that they're doing is the correct business logic that's being used in there.
Yeah, I think that's a great explanation. It's actually kind of a new term to me because I've always kind of been a data scientist, and if you think about like the life cycle of a data, data scientist is pretty far down where the data's already been thought of. The idea's kind of been thought of. The data's been collected, the data's been maybe even cleaned, and then it finally gets to the data scientist. So I'm still learning about data governance, but I think you explained it really well. It's making sure we have, the right amount of data, the right data. Everyone can understand what that data means, like what's the definition of it. Everyone can like look at it. Everyone can access it. It's in a format that works well for people. It's kind of like the first steps of all data projects, right? Does that sound right?
That's correct. It's infrastructure. So if the infrastructure is being built by the data engineers, we're the ones who assist the data engineers. We sit between the data engineers, the analytics, and the stakeholders to make sure that the stakeholders are getting what they want. So we're translating out project requirements for the stakeholders. We're QAing the pipelines with them. And we're also working extensively on the documentation because we're the ones who create the documentation so the stakeholders can understand, is this model delivering us the value that it's supposed to be delivering, or do we need to go back and work with the engineering teams to make sure that it is?
Yeah, that makes sense. That's a big role.
Or a
And
translator,
yeah,
essentially.
translator. Yeah, you're basically like the connection between the technology and the business. Like,
Hmm.
and that's important because the business people are the people that have all the money that fund all these projects, and so your job is really important because you need to accurately talk to the business people and say, hey, this is what the tech people need.
Yep.
And you also need to tell, the tech people, hey, or the other way around too. You need to also say, hey, tech people, this is what the business wants. This is why they're doing it. You're kind of like
Hmm.
the middle link between the two. Okay.
That's correct.
That's really cool. That's great. I think that's a really interesting role, and I think it helps you see all sides of the data, the data life cycle at this company. Um, we got a question here from Derek, and he says, "Can you recommend any personal projects that could help you stand out if you wanted to get into data work with a home security company?" So what type of, I mean, we'll probably talk about projects more a little bit later on, but specifically for a, home security or security in general, what type of projects would you recommend?
It really depends on what role you're trying to go in for. If you're trying to be a data analyst, I think just as long as you got some experience and you can, as long as you're not breaking things, you should be fine. Tableau is actually really big for us, and same with Alteryx. Usually Alteryx, Tableau, of course, reporting, but Alteryx really important for like simplifying pipelines. I mean, sometimes you don't want to build out the pipelines because they're hard and difficult to maintain. So Alteryx is a quick solution of doing that. So Alteryx, I would strongly recommend that. If you're a student, take advantage of it. You got a year to do that. If you have that, I swear I'm not plugging for Alteryx. I wish they'd pay me. But
it would be okay if they did. How much is it? Because do you use it for your freelancing contract work or no?
No, I can't use my Alteryx. Like I'm still in school, but I can't use my Alteryx for that. But
Okay.
I've used Alteryx with different clients. But Alteryx will literally save your life if you're trying to build out really very simple like pipelines or machine learning pipelines. It's amazing. It's pretty much it's steroids, literally.
Okay.
That's how I would describe it.
Let's stay on this Alteryx train for a little bit, because at Exxon there were some people using it a little bit. And as a data scientist, let's just pretend I'm a data scientist. I understand why. For those who haven't heard of Alteryx, I'm actually a shareholder. I own some Alteryx stock because I think it is useful. What it does is it basically allows you to like drag and drop with like modules and like icons to do. I wouldn't even call it data analysis per se. Maybe some fringe data analytics, but mostly it's for like data cleansing, data organizing, getting your data from multiple sources into one data set together. Is that correct? Is that what Alteryx kind of does?
That is correct. Most of the time, yeah, that's what you do. It's a way of doing all the joins and all that other stuff without, having to go through it. And it's really useful for the stakeholders and for, let's say, marketing, because let's say engineering is tied up. Marketing can just go and build out the flow and then use it temporarily. And then engineering can say, oh, if we want to build a more lasting pipeline, then let's go look at it. Alteryx has really gone farther in the last, 2 years, because they started adding like ML stuff into there. So you can do k-means, you can do clustering, whatnot on there too. I haven't tried that, but I've experimented with it. Yeah.
Interesting. I didn't know they had that feature. Yeah, that is interesting, because then they're kind of getting, that's k-means and stuff is kind of basic ML, but then they're also kind of competing with something like, Data Robot and these other no code machine learning platforms. Okay. So that's really good, especially if you don't have necessarily the coding skills. That kind of gives you a little bit of a crutch where you don't necessarily need to code, but you can do the things that, data analysts and data scientists do. Okay. That is interesting. Okay. So going back to Derek's question here, Tableau is really big for you guys. Doing a project in Tableau would be interesting.
Have a portfolio. Have a portfolio site. I will not. I'm going to emphasize that. Have a portfolio site for that. Yeah, it helped me.
It helped you. Did that also? Because we also had a question here, and I also see Taimir. I see your question here, but we're going to take a question here from Sanskriti. She's asking about how to break into freelancing with as a data professional. Did your portfolio also help you get into data freelancing?
It did help quite a bit. Like some of the stuff on my GitHub, it's kind of embarrassing, but still, it helped. At least they can say, hey, well, at least you can do it. We know that you're not some person off the street just saying, hey, I can do it. But so that the portfolio helped. As far as getting into freelancing, there's no 100% easy way. Some of the ways I've done it is like I've worked with Catch a Fire or some of these other volunteer places. I volunteered for some places to get some experience. And sometimes if you work with enough of them, they'll refer you to someone else and say, hey, I know so-and-so. This person knows how to do this. Even if it's Excel. As far as like making the money from that, I wouldn't be the best person to do that because I did turn a profit on that one. But best way to do is just go on Fiverr or Upwork and then just take it from there. The learning how to bid properly and pricing yourself, it's the hardest part. That is the hardest one, because sometimes you'll underprice yourself and then some people won't go after you. And then sometimes you'll overprice yourself and then someone doesn't go after you. So that's an art. And putting out the description and making sure it's succinct and you're marketing yourself, that's an art. And something I'm still trying to figure out myself. So
yeah, it's definitely hard. You definitely, when you become a freelancer, you have to manage more than just the technical things that you may have done previously, right? Because all of a sudden now you're a business owner. So you have to figure out how to get paid, how to pay taxes, how to market yourself, how to get clients, it's a lot of work. It's a lot more than just the technical side. And it can be difficult to get started. I do like what you said, maybe you volunteer for free for some place and get experience. I run my own data analytics firm, right? So I have employees that do projects, for clients for me and stuff like that. And right now I'm working for free. it is halfway for school. But I'm doing a project with the Utah Jazz because I want to get experience in sports analytics, So sometimes you do have to work for free to get that experience and start somewhere, right? I also, like you said, maybe Fiverr or Upwork. I've had way more success on Upwork. I think Upwork, especially for people inside the United States, is a better platform. And you can create a profile there and start small. Going back to what we talked about originally about taking on projects sometimes where you don't necessarily know what you're doing. I took a project once to build a website basically in D3 JavaScript. And I had no idea how to do it. And I put a really low price and instead of paying to learn, I got paid to learn. It wasn't the greatest project and it wasn't the greatest outcome, but it was really cheap for them. And I learned a lot. So I got that project on Upwork. So Upwork's pretty cool. I'm also a shareholder of Upwork. So I'm a big fan. I believe in their platform. Okay. Here's another question we had here from Timir. You're studying data science, not necessarily data scientist yet, but a data analyst, and you've done a lot of contract work. Any tips for self-taught data scientists in terms of getting a job when entry requirements are so high?
Oh,
I guess any advice basically on getting that first data science job?
well, just you need to put in, I'm going to say it over and over again, you have to have a portfolio. I mean, I have a nice website, portfolio website. I mean, you might shell out $120 on Wix, or if you want to do cheaper method, do it on GitHub, but have a nice portfolio website showcasing your stuff, and tailor it to the job that you're going for. So, I mean, I did a general tailoring. I had Tableau. I had my Tableau portfolio, and then I had some of my projects that I worked on my own for that. So make sure that you have that. The first step is you have to make sure that they can look at it and say, hey, this person's worth my investment and it's going to deliver value. Don't overstate it, because if you overstate it, you still have to go through two people. First, you have to go through the HR. HR doesn't know always what the heck they're looking at. They like shiny things. I'm going to put it bluntly. They do like that. They want to see who they can refer to the hiring manager. The hiring manager has to go through your portfolio if they do that. So make sure that it's simple enough for them to understand. If you can put explanations in what you're doing, great. I mean, I've seen people put PowerPoints with some of their portfolio in their GitHub so that the hiring manager or the HR person can look at that. And you still have to explain the business value, because I mean, in the end, you're still making money for that company. You're still an investment in them. You still have to deliver value for the projects you do. So don't always focus on the technique. Focus on what the value of your project is. So that's what you should focus on. And if there's an industry you're targeting, do projects in that industry. That sells to them better.
It does. I always say, if you really want a particular job in a particular company, try to think of a problem that keeps them up at night and try to tackle that as a personal project, right? And even if you don't even finish it, or even if you're not sure the analysis is done, just the act of thinking through that shows so much more initiative than just submitting your resume. Yeah, I totally agree with what you said. I think that makes a lot of sense. Do you have a project a favorite project of yours that you've done that you could talk about? It could either be a personal project or something you did as, contracting or school.
Two, actually. So first one was I did some NLP for some Chinese company that my wife knows. My wife knows. So we were basically going through comments on one of the review sites, and we were scraping the reviews. So, and then using NLP to actually parse it out to see what it was. So that was a little difficult because my Chinese isn't that good.
It was in Chinese.
Yeah, I couldn't read. I can read it, but I can't speak it. And then more complex stuff is harder. So I had to have her help. So in that regard, I mean, trying to build out the corpus, like the words that you should exclude, wasn't hard, but trying to do the sentiment analysis, that was hard. So
Yeah.
I ended up having to work with someone who understood this, and it was a technical review website. So you had to know exactly what was going on. So that was working back and forth on that.
Wow.
The second one was when I was working with Tula, and that was interesting. So we took all the email data, we took all the sales data, and then we looked for patterns to see like what kind of stuff the customer bought. Association rules, market basket analysis. So once we found out customers were like, hey, they bought this product A and product B, let's start. We use that data to build out like email lists so that we could send out to the individuals who bought one product but didn't buy the complementary product. So someone bought a top but they didn't buy a skirt. So would see which customers didn't buy a skirt, and then we would create a list and then use that to remarket to those customers saying, hey, buy a skirt, buy a skirt. So that was a pretty good project that I worked with at one time.
Wow. Yeah, that's really interesting. I liked both those projects. Okay, now is there a technical skill or a software that you like the most, or
Oh,
language?
I am starting to like Azure, and I'm starting to like Go a lot. Go, I'm no expert. I wish I was a software developer on that, but I really liked it. Some of the stuff like with Go that I didn't have with Python, like Python assumes stuff, but Go, it's a lot. You have to spell things out, and I'm kind of that kind of guy because of my documentation stuff. So I like the fact that you can have to spell everything out, like where the data is. You have to define all the data paths, that sort of thing. I'm still learning. But as far as Azure goes, I love Azure. I mean, some people are confused about like the user interface, and I agree, it is. But it's so powerful. I mean, using Data Factory, using Databricks, using ML Studio, I mean, it's changed my life. I mean, it really speeds up building out pipelines where, it's easily maintainable. You don't have to go through like tons of line of code and go through endless code reviews for it. And it's easy to govern it too, because the governance like is connected all within the same package.
That's really interesting. I mean, Azure, for those who don't know, it's Microsoft's like basically data studio. Basically, like you can do a lot of different things with Azure. It's their cloud solution, I guess, including all those things that Matt mentioned. It does give access to machine learning via drag and drop clicking, which does take the coding out of the data science, which is really useful and nice for people who don't necessarily have that coding background. It could be a great place for them, to start. What are you using Go for? I mean, that's not something you typically hear associated with, data professionals. So is it mostly for, I guess, what is it for?
I just wanted a statically typed language. I found Python is just likes to assume a lot of things. So I'm like, hey, might as well learn something. I mean, I took C before when I was like in community college. So I wanted a balance. I don't know where it's going to go. I'm just mostly doing it for fun at this point.
Okay. Okay, cool. I like learning for fun. I think that's always a good thing to do. Um, okay. So let's tackle this question. What advice would you give to people who want to get started as a data professional? Is there something that you would tell them, or like I know you're kind of on your path to fully becoming a data scientist professional full time, right? But I guess what advice would you give to people who are getting started as data professionals?
Well, first off, I mean, you already have some of the skills. I mean, when I was trying to sell myself into data analyst positions and then my current position as a data governance analyst, I tailored my resume. I said, okay, I read through the thing and said, hey, look, what do I have already that I had there? So I said, okay, I already did some stuff with Python. I already did some stuff with Excel. I already did some data analysis, like doing some statistics when I was in school. So people do have the stuff that's already there. They're not what my advice is to look through what you really take a hard look at what you've done so far. Look through it. Look through the position or the goal or the company or the role you're targeting and say, okay, what do I have already that I can use for the next position? Because almost guaranteed you have something. I mean, it might not be much, but companies do take a chance on people who don't have 100% like of the job description. So if you're even 60, 50, 60% of the job description, just apply. I mean, the description that they're putting on there is the ideal candidate. And usually that ideal candidate isn't going to go for that position, from what I found. Even one of the HR people told me this.
Yeah, 100%. I love that. It's like, use the skills that you, or at least like believe in the skills that you do have, put them on your resume, even if you've just touched them once and you can figure it out. If, like, let's say like it says, oh, you need to know Tableau. And let's say you've opened Tableau and maybe you've made 2 dashboards or something, nothing crazy, put Tableau on your resume. And if you get to the next round, they're like, hey, tell me about the details of Tableau. Well, you should, in the week in between, before your interview, you should just learn everything you can about Tableau. There's no need to be an expert at everything in order for it to be on your resume. If you used it once, put it on your resume, and if you're a good thinker, you can learn it and figure it out later. So I agree with that. And yeah, I also think like years experience and having everything on a job description, you're totally right. The job descriptions are really the ideal candidate. And you don't need to be the ideal candidate. You just have to be the right candidate, right? And also sometimes they're the ideal candidate and like the salary don't match up. So it's like they're never going to get someone with all those skills for the salary they're offering. So maybe they'll take you. You never know. You never know until you try.
Exactly. Exactly.
Okay, sweet. Last question here for you. You post on LinkedIn fairly often. Why do you post on LinkedIn? And I guess when did you start posting on LinkedIn?
Honestly, I started posting like
Yep, sorry. Just keep going.
yeah, I started posting on LinkedIn because I mean, I just wanted to I keep seeing people like who are the same as me worrying about, oh, can I get this job? Oh, this seems hard. Why are they asking for a PhD for like a data analyst? So I just wanted to get posting because I'm like, hey, I've gone through some of this. I've been in the same places you have. And the reality is it's not as hard as it looks. And I just wanted to give some clarification. Also, I just spend a lot of time thinking about some of this stuff on my spare time. And I thought, hey, if I can and that's why I even subscribe to you or other people on LinkedIn. It's, hey, these guys are giving me a view of what's on the inside. How would I give my view? Because the more views that people can have, that can give them more perspective on what their path is, where they want to go. And maybe they'll start applying for a position and realize, hey, I'm actually qualified for this position. I don't need to overthink it. So little bits of information from me, from other people in the data science community, that's powerful.
Yeah, I totally agree. And that's very altruistic of you to be posting to help other people along the way. I guess what good have you seen from posting on LinkedIn? Like do you regret posting on LinkedIn? Do you wish you posted more? Are you happy with where you're posting right now?
I'm happy where I'm posting right now. I'm fairly busy with other stuff between like self-study and then work. So, I mean, I'm posting as much as I possibly could. I would like to post more in the future though.
Okay. Well, that's awesome. I love your posts. I'm a big fan. Definitely, once again, if you're watching right now or you're listening, definitely look up Matthew Blasa and add him on LinkedIn to get some of his tips on, being a data professional, what it's like to be involved in data management and data governance, as well as doing freelance and contract data analytics work. Matt, that's all the questions I have for you. Is there anything else you'd like to say to the people of the Data Career Podcast?
Yeah, I mean, don't give up. It might look really, really hard, and if you're not frustrated, if you're frustrated, that's normal. You should be frustrated. You should be wanting to quit half the time. It's the mentality is if you push through that and say, okay, can I step back? Is this what I really want? And you still keep going forward, you're all the stronger for it when you go into an interview and when you go into and when you work. I mean, it's the mentality that you need to like push through this because it just gets more frustrating as when you're in the job than when you're searching for it. So
yeah,
build up
I
that
love that.
tolerance.
Don't give up. It might take a while, but it's worth it. It's working in data is really fun and really rewarding. So don't give up if it gets too hard. I love that, Matt. What a great piece of advice to go out on. Love it. Okay, thank you everyone who watched live. I know we had people like Derek and Timir and Sana and other people. Thank you guys for joining live. Thank you, Matt, for being here. Appreciate it. Once again, connect with him on LinkedIn. And yeah, thank you guys for an awesome session. I'll be back later tonight. If you're listening to the podcast, it's not tonight, but if you're live for the Ask Avery show at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, which is 8 p.m. Eastern. And that's about it. Thank you guys. Appreciate you all. Thank you, Matt, for joining. And we'll see you guys on the next episode of the Data Career Podcast. All right.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.